Thomas was alone. Wow, a weird first thought to have.
Thomas Was Alone is a puzzle platformer created by Mike Bithell. The game focuses on several AI, represented by colorful quadrilaterals, as they explore the world they were born into. But the game is much more than just a simple puzzle platformer. Thomas Was Alone is a metaphor for making friends in the real world. Not only is the game a beautiful puzzle platformer, it also has a deep and powerful message. This video is an interpretive analysis of Thomas Was Alone. Before we get to the metaphor, I'd like to point out the beautiful way the first level is designed, or should I say the first couple levels. Thomas Was Alone does a beautiful job making the player and the player's character feel like one cohesive unit. As Thomas learns, so does the player. And the levels are designed to help bond the player and Thomas. As you can see here, the player does not know any controls at the start of the game, assuming they have never touched a video game before, and the level is designed to first start out with just movement, then falling, and then jumping. The game doesn't start out with jumping because, if you think about it, the most complicated action a player can do out of these three options, either moving, falling, or jumping, is jumping. Movement is pretty self-explanatory. You just press right or left on the analog stick. Falling requires no buttons to be pressed. And jumping is the most complicated of these actions because it requires not only a button press, but also moving the analog stick in conjunction with the button press. So they saved that for last. As the game progresses, Thomas makes friends. He meets Chris and Laura and Sophie and all the rest of the gang, which you then control to solve puzzles. So they're all working together, which is nice. While some levels have a lot of different characters working together to solve the puzzle, most of the levels actually split the characters apart into different areas and then eventually bring them back together to solve the puzzle. This is where the metaphor can be seen quite clearly. By splitting the heroes apart, it reflects how people in real life become friends, but sometimes friends have to move away, and eventually they will come back in the end. The game does an excellent job reinforcing the feeling of loneliness when it wants to. You're greeted with loneliness right from the start of the game, with Thomas being alone and by himself and being confused. Eventually, he yearns for companionship. Another thing that reinforces this loneliness feeling is the music. Now, in most puzzle games, there's usually some sort of happy, uplifting background music, something exciting to keep the player interested. Thomas Was Alone does away with that general idea and instead uses music that is very kind of spread out. It's just little bips and bops of music with some nice ambient sound behind it. This music adds to the overall feeling of loneliness because it's not as cohesive as other pieces of music. It's just kind of out there and kind of reminds you of being in space, the loneliness of space. It's almost as if each bip and bop of music represents the characters and how distant they are, and hopefully they can come together and form a melody of sorts. The game never goes too long without splitting up the heroes, so it keeps the player always wondering what's going to happen next. Are they going to be with their friends? Are they going to be separated? Who knows? One of the final levels of the game is a maze where you kind of have to work together but separately with the heroes, each having their own part of the maze that they have to solve to help the others. This design choice of splitting up the characters allows each character to feel fully fleshed out, because you get to see how they interact with the other characters. You get to see how Chris and Thomas get along, how Laura and Claire get along, and so on and so forth. By splitting the characters up in most of the levels, it reinforces the idea that sometimes friends have to split up and move away. Sometimes they come back together, other times they won't. By the end of the game, each character seems fully fleshed out, because they have their own unique personalities that clash and conflict with other characters. Just like in real life, how friends' personalities often conflict in minor ways. I'd like to talk about the end of the game now, because it is an important part of how this game serves as a metaphor for making friends in the real world. Please watch this clip. This ending symbolizes that friendships can suddenly end without any warning. Things can happen, people can move away, there could be numerous reasons why a friendship would end, but sometimes they just end. It's not the happiest of endings to the game, but it's how I interpreted it. While playing, I grew very attached to these characters because they each have their own unique personality. Seeing these little quadrilaterals interact with each other helped me grow very close to them. And so interpreting the ending this way may not be the happiest, but it is the way that I saw it. Overall, Thomas Was Alone is a beautiful game about friendship and potentially loss as well. It's more than just rectangles jumping up and down on a screen. It's about friendship in the real world and in the fictional.